All right, I think we're recording now. All righty. Oh, hello.
Bill Redmond show?
We get. Well, this isn't on. Thank you. Check 1, 2.
Whoa.
Welcome to the Holly Hill concert, everybody. Just kidding. Today this is very loud.
You gonna sing for us?
Yeah.
No, Chris can sing.
You could do
For our,
Oklahoma. Okay.
for our next song. All right, we're going to go ahead and get this workshop underway. Welcome everybody to the workshop of January 23rd, 2024. Val, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Penny,
Here.
Commissioner Curry,
Here.
Commissioner Daniel,
Where-
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Mayor Villa.
Here. And tonight we are meeting to discuss the future solid waste collection rates. And for anyone in the audience that wasn't here last time, our audio went down, so we apologize for this concert-like setting. I don't like it either because I can hear the reverb, but we'll get through this. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Forte.
Yeah, Mayor, so we're gonna, this doesn't work, how do I do this?
Mike's,
You gotta have a mic.
You want this mic?
Do we have a portable mic?
no.
We can make Brian run around with that. He is the
He is. I was gonna say he is the
Yeah, he is
assistant.
the
city
assistant.
manager.
He should be doing stuff like that.
I'm assistant.
And how well you're assisting.
Okay, so if you recall back some time ago, we had talked about trying to increase the rates that the city charges for solid waste so that we can build up a bit of a reserve in anticipation of the waste pro contract expiring in 2027 and then going out for bid in anticipation that that bid would likely come back significantly higher based on what we're seeing in the industry. And you look at some of the other agencies that have gone out for bids. So in doing that, right around that same time, I had a meeting with Tim Dolan, who represents Waste Pro. He and Susie are here in the audience tonight. And Tim had a very similar idea of them smoothing out some of the cost increase beginning now instead of waiting 3 years. So instead of getting a big hit in 2027, they get a little bit of an increase now and they run it out past the renewal time, that it would be a smoother rate increase rather than one big hit at a time. So we engaged Bill Redmond to work with Tim Dolan and to run some numbers, and he's done that, and we'll get some of those spreadsheets up on the overhead for you to take a look at. And in essence, what he's done is he's added a $2.50 increase per household per month, plus up to 5% CPI, plus fuel cost adjustments. And the up to 5% means that if you get a year where the CPI is a 2% increase, it's a 2% increase. If you get a year where the CPI is 7%, they would only get a 5% increase that year, but that extra 2% would carry over the following year. That, let's say if it was 2% that year, then they would make it up, they would get 4%. So that's kind of the model that Bill had done, and he ran out of four different strategies on that. And he'll go over each one of them, but for the most part, what you're going to see is this rate increase will run out for 13 years. You see this 14 years on the spreadsheet. In the initial rate increase, it showed a $2.50 increase plus up to 5% CPI for Waste Pro to get that for the first 5 years, and then after that, it would drop down to just CPI and fuel costs. But we ran the city's rate increase going out the entire time. And the purpose of that was for us to continue to build some type of a reserve in that particular fund. That doesn't mean that you have to run that 250 out for that 13 or 14 years. It just means that on the spreadsheet, we ran it out. At any time in advance of or during the process, you may decide, all right, we're not going to, the reserves are healthy enough. We don't feel that we need to continue to do a $2.50 rate increase. And you may decide to stop that in year 8 or year 10 or year 12, whatever. It's an option. So I'm gonna let Bill talk a little bit about the 4 spreadsheets. And at the end of the meeting, there's 2 things that I kind of need direction on. One is, with regards to this discussion, you're gonna really have 3 options. The first option is to take the proposal that's in front of you, and maybe it needs a couple of tweaks, and you direct the staff to bring it back at a near future meeting for formal decision making. The second option is, there's a lot more questions that need to be answered, and you direct the staff to continue to work with Bill and Tim, and come back at another work session with more information. The third option is, we do nothing. You may decide that the city will go ahead and increase its rates, but we do nothing with Waste Pro, and we go out to bid in 3 years and see what the open market does. The risk with that is not knowing what the open market is going to be in 3 years. You know, as a conservative manager, my concern is it's always going to be higher, but there's a possibility that maybe, I won't say lower, but it'll be more fair. It won't be as drastic of an increase. But that's the risk that we have to take, and we have to do that with as much information as we possibly can in making the decisions. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bill and let him talk about the 4 spreadsheets. And one of the things I had mentioned to Bill, I didn't talk to Tim about it yet, but when we talk about a $250 per month increase over 5 years, and that's basically what the city's increasing, so we're not building up any reserve over that period of time until after that stops. Is it possible that we can do a $1.25 increase over a 10-year period? I don't know. It's pretty much, these are examples, and everything is up for discussion. Nothing is finalized tonight. This is just the first work session of what may be more, or maybe the last one. We'll see how the discussion goes. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Bill. And Bill, if we need to put the spreadsheets up, I know it's kind of difficult to see.
That's why I got this.
That's good for you.
We got them
Just try don't have to wear
We
glasses.
got it in front of us.
We have them in front of us.
Okay, you got them in front of you. All right, good. I'm going to wing this back around to the mayor.
Bill Redmond, Redmond Consulting Group, the City of Solid Waste Consultant. The first thing when we sat down with the city manager was to ask him, and we oversee this contract, we do the monthly reports and so forth. Is the city satisfied with the service? And all the indications is the city is very satisfied with the service that they're receiving. So that's the first indication you want to discuss about the possibility of renewing this contract or extending this contract. What we've done is we've gone through the contract, the current contract that went into place several years ago. And we went through it page by page, and we also set up an addendum, which the city attorney and city manager has reviewed. We've gone through it several times with staff and with the public works director. So there's about 7 pages in the amendment that would amend this contract. And one of the questions was did the current contract allow for this? And the way the contract was initially written was that the city has the right to extend this contract for additional 10-year terms, plural, under the same terms and conditions or additionally negotiated conditions between the parties. So you have the right. When we ran the spreadsheets, what we did, we looked at the marketplace. We know that what has recently gone out for proposals. And I believe you have that chart. There are several cities that have very low rates, but their contracts are fixing to expire. And we are working with several of those municipalities now to either take them through an RFP process or to renegotiate their existing contracts. The last time that the local city went out for bid was on the beach. And their bids came back. One was $3 million higher, one was $2 million higher, and one was $1 million higher. I don't have to tell you who they picked. They picked the $1 million higher one. but that was $1 million hit all at one time. What the city manager is trying to do is to soften the blow, basically, for lack of better terms, because we know what's going on in the marketplace. In some places in South Florida, we're seeing rates as much as $60, $70 per month, as opposed to $32, $34. Palm Coast and Flagler County just went out to bid, and those are in your packages, I believe. There's $32. That was a tremendous increase for them. Cost of the trucks.
Bill, when you talk about those numbers, make sure you're referring to them as, that's the hauler's rate, not the.
That's correct. All the rates that I'm talking to you about would be what would be cost to the city. The cost of the trucks today have dramatically increased. We're going to get another hit from some of the EPA standards in 2024, 2025. Last one was about a $25,000 per truck increase cost, and we're probably going to get that again. To get the vehicles, to get the collection vehicles, it's taken up to a year to get those. One of the CEOs of one of the large companies showed me a picture of the Mac yard. Hundreds of chassis sitting out there with, they can't run because they can't get the chips to run the computers. And same thing's happening with ovens and stoves and refrigerators for these apartments projects. So what we tried to do is, when we ran these spreadsheets, we took into account your cost. And if you look at line 29, it's called the expenses.
Which sheet are we on?
I'm on the 7-year. I've been working on the 7-year spreadsheet.
Scenario A, 7 years.
Yeah, ours doesn't have lines on it,
So-
numbers on it.
It should be attachment to. Check the other one.
No, on these, there's no
Yeah.
numbers on it. That's okay though. We can follow along if we're all in the 7-year. That's the first long page
right.
for everyone.
If you look down, it should be highlighted, or not highlighted, but in bold, $19.31 is about, and it says in column C, you got ABC.
Yep.
That's your current cost. If you run that across, you take the 1931 and you add the 5% to it, which is 97 cents, and then you add the $2.50 to that. We did not put the CPI onto the amount, including 250. The 250 is after. So your cost then in the next year would be $22.78. You run that across to what year is that? Year 5, and you're going to get to just about where current bid rates are coming in, or RFP rates are coming in at your cost. That's $34.25. So it's between $30.23 and $34.25. When you move it on out, you go across to lines J or K, I don't know if you can see that or not. You're up to $42, $43, $47. Can I tell you what the crystal ball is going to be? No, I can't. I can't tell you. I can only estimate what your cost is going to be and what you're going to have to charge your residents. If you go down, further down, to almost the bottom. I know you don't have lines, but it's highlighted in blue. You'll see your current rate plus 250 is $28 and change. It moves. That's the line that moves across to where you should be building your reserves. So when you get it out to the 10th year, the cost is going to be $60. 10 years from now to your residents, and that's being very conservative. That's not building your reserves for future disasters and so forth, probably at a rate that you should be at. But I'm trying to be realistic here and where you're going to be. And as I told your city manager the other day, you can take the chance of where will you be in 2.5 years, 2 years, and go for a bid. But I've always been one that likes to deal with the known as opposed to the unknown. And that would be my advice to you, is to look at the 5-year or 7-year. I believe if we went to the 5-year, if we did the 4 years or 5 years, we could probably do this again if that's something the city would want to do. But if you go to the 5-year, my concern for you is in year 6,
So now he's talking about scenario
the 5-year commitment.
1A, the 5-year contract, if you look at the top.
My concern for you would be that the rates would barely, just barely reach current status, current bid rates, essentially.
Yeah, it's a workshop. Anybody can ask.
So, excuse me, Bill, I just want to back up, looking at, so correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at current year, expense to customers, $25.01, right? The blue line.
That's what you charge.
Right, 25.01.
Yeah.
And then our expense is $19.31, right?
Your cost.
Our
Yep.
cost.
It's 1931, yes, sir.
So there's $5.70 per account excess,
Right now.
That's correct.
correct? So if we want to go down, the increase, there's not that much of an increase. Next year it's $5.98, and if we go all the way down to year 10, it's $6.62.
That's correct.
So it's holding around that $6 figure, but I thought Mr. Forte is telling us that our reserves are getting low and we're trying to increase those reserves. So if we're only banking $5.70 a month now, and we're going through all this stuff, how are we gonna really build reserves?
My answer to that is I would increase your reserve amount. I would increase that 250 to 350 or
Right.
something like that.
But we're not really
that was
building
the concern
reserves.
that we had earlier, is you're not building your reserves strong enough.
Right. But then you look at it and it's like, in 15 years, the rates triple, right?
Yep.
Basically. On all these scenarios.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I was looking at it right.
So my recommendation would be to look at the 7-year with your contractor, but I also would suggest that you consider allowing your city manager and your finance director to build your reserves above what we have in these projections. Because your costs during a storm are not going to go down.
Right.
They're going to continue to go up with like insurance rates. So.
Continue on, Mr. Redmond. Or is that it for your presentation? Other than
Yes,
questions?
Unless you want to discuss any of the amendment.
Well,
It's like a ball
I'm
boy.
going to just swing around by you.
Yeah.
I think that's-
Yeah,
You can leave it over there, Brian.
Oh, you're doing a good assistant.
Start calling you Maury.
I'm gonna get the coffee for
Oh,
everybody.
Might watch it, Jerry. You might make you an elected official sitting over there.
Okay. All right, so we need to kind of figure out where we want to go with this. So that was the one primary example. Now, like Bill said, there's a couple of other examples in here. It's a 5-year contract. that ends at, it's a 13-year contract, but the increases end at 5 years. There's two other scenarios that are in here.
The one scenario, Mr. Forte, that's just CPI only, that was only an exercise because you never get to the current, actually to the current rate.
Right, yeah, so that's really not that's the 10-year contract with an annual CPI only, that's the last
Scenario
page.
IIB,
Correct,
2B.
yeah. So that's really not a realistic scenario. And as Bill mentioned earlier, this is not just a scenario of trying to figure out a rate. There's more complexity to this because, we have standards in the agreement that talk about the conditions of the trucks. So we don't want dilapidated trucks in the city. We want trucks that are either new or they've been refurbished, and there's a cost to that. And a hauler's not going to come in here on anything less than really a 10-year contract if they're going to have to invest in equipment. So that equipment investment is also rolled into these numbers. So it's not just a matter of collection and CPI and fuel costs. There's all that other stuff that makes up what those costs are. So I want to kind of leave, and the other thing I said there was two things that I wanted to conclude at the end of this, and we talked about the three options that we have. But the other thing I want to talk about is we also haven't talked about a rate increase to the commercial customers. And that's the area that we're really far behind on compared to what we're getting charged versus what we're charging the customer. And that's not a surprise to any of us. That's something that we've done over the course of several years. We haven't increased our rates except I think 1 or 2 times over the last 10 years. And we intentionally kept those rates stabilized because we had the monies in the reserves. But we're at that point in our organization where we have to start replenishing some of those reserves. So I'll kind of leave it open to you, Mayor. Bill, do you want to just run down some of the deal points in the?
Yeah, let me go back and I want to address the commercial rate. What we did on the commercial rate, your local rates, Ormond Beach is $11, $12 a cubic yard now. Just recently renegotiated. Your rate is 7 and change, and what we did was we added $1.88 to that per cubic yard price, and moved that up to $9.50 per cubic yard, and then start adding 5% CPI to that one. The other area of the commercial rates that we have great concerns for you is on the commercial toters. Is your toters, with what you're billing and what you're paying, is less than $1. So those need to be addressed in the rate sheets, which we have added to the addendum. So, but if you want me to go through the addendum somewhat there?
So before you move on, just so we're all clear, what year does the current contract end?
2027. Scott, is it 2026? 2027.
10-year contract that was entered into in 2017.
And so that will go to, well, when does that go? To December of 2027?
I'm assuming it would probably be the end of
September
September.
30th.
September? Okay.
Yeah. That's what usually when our contract.
And
I've got the original contract
if we-
for briefcases, you'll need to look at.
if we were not to go with any plan here, keep it as is in the contract and honor that, when would we go out to bid that? In 2027 sometime?
Or the end of 2026.
We'd have to do it-
The bidding process is pretty
You
long.
need a year.
A year in advance.
Okay.
Because if you have to get trucks, it's gonna take anywhere from 6 to 12 months to get the trucks, and that doesn't seem to be getting any better off the production lines. If you change contractors, first of all, we'd have to train the new contractors. And we would have to make sure that they have their proper equipment in place. Mayor, when my first truck, when I had my company, my first truck, I bought a rear loader for $112,000. Those rear loaders now are $335,000, $340,000. The front loaders are almost $400,000, $385,000 to $400,000. So the cost of the equipment has continued to go up and it's going to continue to go up. That's what is going to affect your rates on the term of the contract. So if you did nothing and you went to an RFP, you would need to go, I would suggest you start the process 1 year in advance. Because if you go through the process, it takes you 5 to 6 months to go through the process. Then you have to go through the process of getting it started, whether it's a new contract or an existing contract. What we've done in the addendum, and we've worked this out with Waste Pro, that they would change the fleet, they would upgrade the fleet over a 3-year period. So during the term of that contract, whether it's 5, 7, 10, 15 years, whatever, they would upgrade the fleet. Those trucks are good for, on the front line, 7 to 10 years. So,
Vice Mayor?
Does the average citizen really care what the garbage truck looks like? It's a garbage truck. I mean, I understand there's lots of working hydraulics and everything on it, but if they're picking it up with an old truck, does the average resident care if it's brand new? A fire truck, I get. You know, new fire trucks put out fires, but if it can pick up trash and it's an old truck, does it matter?
It's more than just the aesthetics of the truck. It's whether the truck is leaking, material out of the bottom, the hydraulics are leaking, it's making noises. We got complaints of when a truck backed up, you heard it 3 blocks away. You got to go out and repair that.
Okay.
So it's more than just the paint on the outside. There's a lot more detail to it.
And one more thing. So I'm assuming the CPI on the expense side, it's estimated at 5%, and it's capped on the revenue side at 5%.
Not to exceed 5%,
Not to
so it
exceed.
could be lower.
But those are the same. So our expense is going to be tied to the CPI as well as the revenue?
Yeah, whatever we get billed, we roll on to the customer. And that's why I'm saying that first 5 years, if we do 250 plus up to 5% and the fuel adjustment, basically a slight increase to the city because our rates are already higher. But for the most part, we won't be building any reserves in that first 5-year period.
one of the things that the city manager just mentioned is the fuel adjustment factor is a separate factor. We have no clue what the fuel's going to do. So that's a separate factor in that collection rate. It could go up or down. It's one of the things that the city attorney asked me. On the example, if it's below the strike point, what we created the strike point, then it's a reduction. If it's above, then it's an increase to the rate. The disposal costs increased this year for the first time in 15 years in Volusia County, but we have no control over that. And the disposal cost is a pass-through to begin with.
And really, the county hasn't increased landfill rates in years.
In 15 years,
Yeah.
they just did it this year.
Right.
What we did in the amendment is we set up the term under the current contract, and we left that blank because it's your decision what you do with the term. They're going to continue using the cloud-based tracking system, which we currently use to track any requests, complaints, or compliments. If the contract expires, or under this amendment, the contractor has 30 days prior to the expiration or termination of the contract to provide the city with GPS-type collection routes and schedules for each type of service provided. When we did this before, when we took over from Waste Management, when Waste Pro took over from Waste Management, we had a fairly difficult time getting it squared away for routes and so forth. So this is one of the things the city manager requested, and if for some reason or another this contract expires or is canceled, that they have 30 days to give us all of that route information so we don't have minimal hiccups, let's put it that way, in the collection process. We've changed the bulky waste to We know that each pile has to be tagged and include the address, date, and time. What they're doing now, currently, is we find quite a few tags out there. Our people in the field find quite a few tags out there with no date and time on it. So we don't know when they tagged it, and it's not picked up. So what we do is we write it up as a complaint so that it gets back into the system. Method of payment for the contract for the collection of excess yard waste, we've gone on to further to identify what was considered excess yard waste, and that's included in the pricing sheets. We've gone on to further identify what we call special collections. Recyclables, they previously was delivering recyclables to their facility in Ocala. We are paying them $77.50 a ton for recycling. We now are going to allow them to take it to other licensed facilities because they have the possibility of taking it down to Brevard County or whatever. But they have to include that with the Public Works Director. There's been no market, no rebates or marketing for recyclables. And that's been going for several years.
Internally, we talked about the recycling market. And although the rate to the customer is going up about, what, 30 cents a month, something like that?
Yeah, the processing fee of $77.50 a ton is going to go to $150 a ton. That's calculated into your expenses over the next couple of years.
So when we looked at it, recycling is, it's more of a feel-good thing than it is a reality. And I still think that, at least in this community, people are going to want to still see recycling. So we're anticipating these rates are going to include the recycling costs and the recycling collection that we currently do. So that's an assumption that we put in here.
So, Bill, is there any data to show how full the average toter is? What I'm getting at is, we pick up twice a week.
For garbage?
For garbage. Like my wife and I put 2 bags, there's only 2. We put 2 bags in there. We can take our trash out every third pickup day. But is there, I guess it's a 2-part question. Do we know that data, and is there any significant savings going to 1 day a week?
First of all, you better hire some more people to man the phones if you do that.
Yeah.
I think an easier way to answer that, instead of telling you whether or not the toters are full, what we always talk about is the makeup of the community. And having a high rental community, there's a lot of move-in, move-outs. So we have a lot of tonnage in the city, not necessarily based on the average homeowner who's been in their house for a long period of time, but on a lot of the rental properties where people are moving in and moving out, and that stuff hits the street quite often. So it's not the amount of waste that's in a toter, it's what is our tonnage collection on a daily or a monthly.
Piles
or
of mattresses on the side of the road and stuff like that?
it could be anything. When people move out, they put stuff in the toters. They could be dropping TV, well, not TVs, they're pretty light nowadays, but they're putting all kinds of stuff in there, and it's increasing our tonnage. So we have to look at the overall city. I read an article once where a commission asked that very question, and it came down to them wanting to dump a few solid waste trucks in a parking lot just to see how full the truck was. I don't think we ever want to do that. There's better ways to check that with a truck going across the scale than it is to dump a bunch of trash in a parking lot.
Yeah.
So, and I think we can get those numbers for you if
We
you're.
have those numbers.
I just don't know if there's any merit, and I
Your
don't.
tonnage, I do your tonnage reports every month.
Yeah.
I get the tonnage reports and the landfill.
Yeah, we got it. It comes to me, Antoine, and Jason, and Utility Bill.
I think you're running about 49 pounds per house per week.
Okay.
That wouldn't be per pickup because 82% of all, on twice a week garbage, 82% of all the garbage is picked up the first day. So the second day is basically a cleanup day, basically. The trucks are off the street earlier and so forth. On Mondays and Tuesdays in here, especially Tuesdays on the west side, where it's more heavier rental. The trucks are usually in here to just about the time they have to be out of here. So
But I don't think you'd have community support to go to a once-a-week collection.
Jim Griffin did that with the county.
Who did it?
Jim Griffin, many years ago, did that with the county.
No.
And he said the first week they had 3,000 phone calls.
Yeah. And I appreciate the Vice Mayor looking for ways
I'm just
to
trying to
save.
save.
Exactly. I, for one, we have to put bags outside of it. You know, I have a big family, a lot of kids. So I personally would be against going to
No,
the
I'm just
one, but
trying
I
to get
appreciate you looking for ways to save because, you know, that's what we should be talking about here today. When it comes to the recycling, though, I think that there can be a conversation had between this commission and when you talk to your constituents about it. I know the constituents that I've talked about in the last few years, I've educated them on recycling, what's actually being recycled, and they're always blown away with what's not being recycled and just going to the landfill anyways.
Pizza boxes, it's all the time.
Yeah, pizza boxes, yeah, horrible. So the problem with that is I know that when was it Deltona did away with it, they took a lot of flack, the city did. I don't know if that's calmed down since.
We represent the
Do you?
city. When we did that 65 years ago, we had very few phone calls.
Oh, so it was all just, I saw a lot online and from some of the officials over there, I heard that there was a lot of pushback. But I think the key is education, and they were on the cutting edge of the sword. That may have died down. People may have understood now what recycling is. So if there's a cost savings in that aspect, I would look at
Well,
that.
I think my observation is in my neighborhood, anyways, is that there's less recycling bins out because people believe it's all going to the landfill anyway, so they're
Yep.
just filling their toter.
Less
The
and
large
less.
percentage of it is.
So.
Yeah, we have very few in my neighborhood.
I'm sorry.
We have very few in my neighborhood.
That's a decision that the commission can make, you know. Just remember that when we will save money on the
If we save on
recycling
our
cost,
tonnage goes up.
but your tonnage cost is it's not equal.
True.
There'll be a cost savings, but your
True.
tonnage rate will go up.
Good point.
But, you know, the thing about it is if I look at the Deltona's tonnage, just like I look at your tonnages, yours is running about 47, 48 pounds per house per week. This is running 51.
Wow.
So, and they're pretty heavy garbage.
Yeah.
Sorry if I cut you off, Mr. Redmond. You can continue.
I'm sorry?
You can continue.
Okay. I don't know if you've had a chance to go through the amendment. If you had any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Marketing of recyclables is basically what we just talked about. Charges to the city for disposal of recyclables. The only thing that I would add there, Scott, under Section 5B is under where it says if the agreement cannot be reached for a contractor, they cancel the contract with 365-day notice of termination. If they can't reach the agreement on the disposal of that, it'll be under the same conditions as stated in 11, Section 70 below.
Yes, so I just want to repeat that, you know, we kind of call that the golden parachute clause. And what that means is that if as we go through these rate increases, we decide that it's something that we can't afford or we don't want to afford, and the contractor decides that, you know, they don't want to budge on it, it gives them an out. You know, if they're going to lose money on this contract, we don't think anybody should lose money. Now, in the past, they weren't making as much of a margin, and we didn't give much credit to that when they made a request. But if they ever fall into a position where they're going to actually start to lose money or become so critical, that they have an opportunity to actually back out of the contract. But they would give us 1 year's notice to do that, which would allow us the time to go ahead and rebid the contract. But I also asked them to put language in there that it doesn't just become a discussion between the hauler and me. We may need to decide, all right, well, let's go to some type of mediation where we'll get a third party in to try to help us negotiate a conclusion rather than throwing the contract out in a year. So that language is in there as well.
The adjustment to the collection component for the CPI, we named specific CPI, which is under water, sewer, trash, under the trash index itself. before we had the general CPI, and it's only reasonable to, this is called solid waste, so it's only reasonable to put the CPI under that.
Yeah, and again, that general CPI increase, which included water and sewer, doesn't raise the bar, doesn't raise that cost as much as the trash-only component. And you'd think, well, let's stay with the water, sewer, trash component, but all that does is hurts the contract, because we're not doing, you know, I guess what I'd call fair market rate increases based on the industry if we're holding it back, and that's just going to create a problem down the road. So we decided to put the numbers in based on the trash-only CPI.
The unusual cost of doing business is what the city manager just talked about, is if the parties are unable to agree to any increases, there will be a dispute resolution or mediation. The only proof that the contractor has not obtained a reasonable margin is determined by dispute resolution or mediation to be notice for cause of termination. The under section 12, Roman number 12, that's where we talk about phasing in the 3-year equipments, with new equipment. We have negotiated in the past to allow the contractor to use totally refurbished equipment. The previous, the way they refurbished the equipment became unacceptable. And I met with the chairman of their company here a couple of weeks ago. He has said they have changed that philosophy where they're basically putting old bodies, refurbished bodies on new chassis. So that should, if we decided to go that route and allow them to go that route rather than new equipment, that should cure the problems of what we were having with hydraulic leaks and cylinder rams going down and so forth. General container requirements, mechanical rolling front load dumpsters, 2 and 4 yards will be made of plastic, 6 and 8 yards will be made of metal. We have added in some additional administrative charges to the detriment of or the objection, I'll put it that way, of Waste Pro, but they don't, we oversee that contract for you. And these are the things that we have seen that where we need to tighten up with that contract over the last 4 or 5 years.
And Bill, we're gonna, I'm gonna ask you to get to your highlights here, because we also want to bring up Mr. Dolan as well.
Okay. Can I ask one question?
Yeah, ask.
So I know this is an attempt to smooth the rate, and on the 7-year, it appears that the increase to the customer is year 1 15%, and 14, and 13, and 12, all the way down to 6.2 at year 14. Has there ever been discussion about making it a true smoothing of maybe 8% per year over that 14-year period? What's that do to the numbers?
It'll take our reserves down.
We did it in terms of dollars rather than percentages, so it is a diminishing increase in terms of percentage, but the
Right.
dollar rate stays the same. So if the dollar rate stays the same, but the number, like 250, and every time you add 250, if you're just adding 250, that percentage goes down.
Okay.
I didn't look at a scenario where we did a flat percentage increase across the board.
We can do that.
Yeah,
I
we
just
could.
don't know. It's just, I mean, the number is small now, so a 15% increase isn't a large increase.
Right.
But that just caught my eye, that the percentage increase is going down, and we're attempting to smooth it, where we're actually giving them a shock the first couple of years and then decreasing it.
We could run a scenario on that just to see what it
I just
does.
didn't know what it would do. I mean,
But-
it's a huge spreadsheet. so-
Yeah, again, operationally, it's got to make sense for the hauler,
Right,
and
right.
it's got to make sense for the city as a collector.
Well, I think if we did that, Mr. Forte, we leave the hauler's rate the same. We just drop down to
The
the
CPI.
rates that the city charges and run it on that scenario.
And-
That's something you'd like to see.
And well, one more thing, if the CPI is less than 5% any given year, let's say it's 3% next year, and then it's 8% the next year, can they grab that percentage back, or is it 5%
Only
increase?
2% of it.
The other way, if you had a high CPI one year of 8% and the next year it was 3%, they can carry over 2% to the following year.
They can't exceed 5.
Right, but so we're basically, if you have a good year, we're guaranteeing them 5. It's pretty good average. What's the CPI average over the last 20 years?
Last 20 years, it's been all over the board.
How about we go the last 5?
It's been low, but the last couple of years have been
Yeah.
sky high.
I just,
Yeah, Mr. Dolan, if you want to come up. Yes.
so the CPI is a pass-through anyways, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so the CPI, I'm sorry, the CPIs on this index, now the last couple of years, all CPIs have been through some craziness and whatnot. It's usually running 3.5%, 4.5% on a given year.
Okay.
So it kind of
On average.
it floats around in that area.
Okay. And Mr. Redmond, do you have anything else to add? Just because we're running short on time for the
No,
commission
sir.
meeting, and I don't want to keep you guys after the commission meeting,
Just
so.
looking for direction, that's it.
I just have one question.
Yes.
How would the favored nations clause in our current contract work with what you're talking about? Because it seems like it could be a protection in that one of the things I think the commission would be concerned about if we lock ourselves into this escalating price increase and all of a sudden prices don't go,
Well,
they go down, the favored nations clause, if they bid somewhere else, a lower contract,
if
we can get that rate, right?
If we keep the same favored natures clause in there, then it would be a determination of this commission to decide whether, and they gave the same service
For the
at a
same-
lower rate on a current bid, which I don't think is going to happen.
No, but I mean, if they're
If it
worried
did,
about that, that would provide some
I wish it
protection.
would be up to this commission to either waive that or to enforce it.
But again, I want to reiterate, the favored nations clause is not just the dollar amount. It has to do with number of pickups, it has to do with your tonnage, it has to,
You gotta compare apples and apples.
right,
It has to be like service.
right.
Okay. All right, Mr. Dolan, I know we went through everything, but do you have something to add for us?
I mean, really, if there's any questions that need to be answered, we talked a little bit about trucks, and Bill's actually, I think trucks this year were running about 4.25, 450. So, and even a brand new CNG automated truck was running 510. So that's not slowing down, and there are some new regulations going in, I think in 2027, that's going to push those prices even more. So there is some benefit to getting the ordering on those trucks. And like I said, the life of the truck's about 10 years, but after, to Joe's point, after a certain amount of time, those trucks get beat up pretty good. And at some point in time, it's time to, retire it, put it out in the field, that kind of thing, and not run it anymore.
So are those trucks designated to our city, or are they getting beat up in other cities too?
No, they're unique. They're dedicated to this site.
And here's something that you might see or you might hear. So we have a couple of trucks in the city. They pick up on Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday. But the same truck is also being used for recycling. And people may see recycling going in a trash truck, but it's going to the recycling center. So I don't want people to think that, it used to be that we used to sort at the street and you'd see the guys out there and they'd be putting paper in one spot and bottles in another. Well, it's all single source now, so it goes into a trash truck, but then that's delivered to the recycling center.
Oh, Joe,
I'm not accurate, go ahead and correct me.
You're wrong.
the trash trucks are work Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday on residential. On Wednesday, they pick up all the yard waste.
Right.
And there is a recycling truck in here that runs 4 or 5 days a week. That's a recycling
It's running that
truck.
many days a week?
So
It's running 4 days a week, the recycling truck?
I think
I thought
they
it
have the
was
city broken up into 4 sections, or it could be 5 days.
Okay, I thought it was just the 2. Okay.
But the trash trucks pick up all the yard waste on Wednesday.
Yeah. Okay.
Are there any other questions for either representatives here?
Well, the fuel is assumed at a 4% annual increase on the expense side. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, sir?
The fuel cost
Yes, sir.
is assumed at a 4% annual increase?
Yes,
And so if it's less, we're not gonna pay that.
that's right. It
So
is
there'll be
whatever
more,
it
there'll be
is.
more, if the fuel is less than a 4% increase, there's an increase in the profit,
That's correct.
correct?
The fuel adjustment is set at a base from the original contract. And if the fuel is below, I believe it was 330 or something like that. So if fuel is below 330, it's a decrease.
Okay.
It's a percentage decrease. If it's above 330, it's a percentage increase.
Okay. But for the illustration, we assume 4% on the illustration, though, right?
I raised the question about us increasing our rates.
Okay.
And we were at a discussion to balance out the books. We came to one of those meetings and I brought it up.
There's a lot of
Now that
information.
you mentioned it, we should talk about it.
So let me ask a tough question. I hope I don't make this awkward for you, Mr. Dolan, but I know what happened in Palm Coast when that happened, and as I understand it, that was Waste Pro, correct?
Correct.
And then you decided not to bid once they went out to bid for that contract, is that correct?
No, we did bid it.
Oh, you did bid, and then they just chose
It was
the other
just-
company? Okay.
Yeah, I think there was 10 or 15.
The only reason I ask is I believe we started this conversation with you to see what we can do to smooth this out. But if this commission decides that we're going to go ahead and go through with this current contract and then bid it in 2027 or 2026, Waste Pro is invested here in Volusia County and would still want to bid at that time. I know you can't speak that far out, but the question to this is, you've put in a lot of hard work for this, and I just don't want it to create any animosity or bad blood between the company and the city, because we do appreciate you. You do a good job. I just want to look at all the numbers, all the scenarios.
No, understood. So, no, I mean, business is business. We're certainly interested in staying here. And to give you the example, up in Flagler County, the Palm Coast did change, but then the county itself was very happy with our service and continued forward. So,
Okay.
no, we understand you guys have decisions to make. Again, the main thing for this, and we're having this discussion with a lot of cities right now, is that in the past couple of years, really the cost of doing business has changed so much.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't remember when drivers were getting paid $14, $15 an hour, now they're getting paid $26, $28. And that's all
Yeah.
happened in like the last 2 or 3 years,
Right.
okay? Bill had mentioned trucks. The same truck that was $3.25 2-3 years ago is now $4.50. Okay, so, and the supply chain and, everything else, a Big Mac meal now is $11, where it used to be $6 or $7. Okay, that kind. So everything is pushed up. And again, I've got data from around the state. I mean, I ran something a while back. The average jump in cost was 60%. Sometimes 80, sometimes 100, just depending on where a contract was. So the whole idea, the whole idea of this is, if you do a gradual increase over a 5-year period, you're not,
Have to go up.
Morgan Beach was mentioned, the guy in the newspaper had a field day, saying your rates are now going up too on September 30th, and, that kind of stuff. So it's there to kind of give a bridge to the residents of the city as far as what the transition is.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this to you, Mayor. This is what we do for a living with our company. We would enjoy taking you out for an RFP and a bid, but I also represent this city, and I think I started out by saying I prefer to deal with the known as the unknown. And if we take you out for an RFP, that's a profit center for us. But I don't think it's, in my opinion, deal with the known as opposed to unknown.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Are there further questions for either of these gentlemen? All right. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
We'll call you back up if needed. We only have 3 minutes, so this commission, I think we need to discuss this and give a little bit of direction to Joe what we would like to see. If anybody would like to.
You want to bring it up at the end of the commission meeting and bring it back?
We can, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, we have 2 minutes to the meeting, to the commission meeting starts. So Unless anybody wants to specifically ask any questions right now or give their opinion now, you can, or we can hold it to the end of the commission meeting and discuss it further. All right, I see nobody.
One quick question.
Yep.
So I'm looking at the difference between the 7-year and the 5-year. And the difference, 7-year has total revenue of 6.9, call it 6.884. And the 5-year has 6.7, 6.672. Not that much of a difference. But the expenses on the 7-year plan is 3.4 million, and the expenses on the 5-year plan is almost 3 million. So
500,000.
it's a bigger delta for, there's greater income on the 5-year than the 7-year. Am I incorrect?
Well, the expenses are different, yeah.
See what I'm saying?
So there's a $500,000 difference in 14 years.
The 7-year shows annual billable revenue of 6,884,000. And it shows the total expenses as 3,473,000. And then the 5-year shows total revenue 6.672, but total expenses only 2.979.
So a $300,000 difference.
And the cost, the annual cost to the consumer is less under the 5-year plan than under the 7-year plan.
I'd have to review that with your finance director.
Does anyone else see that?
I see that, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, all right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and, is there anything further before this commission, for this workshop? All right. Seeing none, we will adjourn, and the city commission meeting is going to start in 2 minutes. We are adjourned. Yeah. You want me to just pause it or stop it altogether?
Stop it, yeah.
Okay.
Then we'll start it up again.